This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Good news on the pro-life front, including the legal pro-life front, and not everybody likes acknowledging that there's good news in the world, but there is, and that is the topic of today's podcast. Somebody who doesn't believe in good news and has no good news whatsoever in his aura of life is my co-host, Mr. Steve Carlin.
My aura, this is springtime. It's my time to shine. I'm happy. The weather's getting nice. All is well in the world, and Matt is right next to me.
Matt is...
I thought he was introducing me, actually.
Who could ask for anything?
You were the aura part of Steve. So welcome back to Texas, both of you. We have a lot to cover. There is good news. We have said, somewhat controversially, that since the fall of Roe, people have a difficult time accepting good news. I am under the belief, and I was raised pro-life and have been pro-life my whole life. I consider myself very pro-life. I think that the overturning of Roe versus Wade was a good thing for the United States of America.
Yeah, sure, but how do you feel about the defunding of Planned Parenthood? Was that good news?
It was terrible. They closed 64 facilities. No, it's the defunding, as we've said, is probably harder to believe. It was gradual. It didn't feel gradual at the time because Trump named 3 Supreme Court justices in 4 years. But that sort of, Scalia died. The world was going to end. It was February of 2016. Hillary was going to be our president. It was just looking horrible. Cecile Richards is doing a great job running Planned Parenthood. But the overturning of Roe, you could still see it was like years in the making. Matt predicted it would happen in 2018 on the podcast, actually. And then that happened. I never thought they would actually defund Planned Parenthood. I just think that they would take, hey, we overturned Roe, which is a huge victory for the Trump administration. It's one of the few things they don't brag about. And but the defunding was tough. He wanted to defund them in 2017. Paul Ryan, your best friend from Wisconsin, was useless along with all the other useless Republicans, and they didn't do it. And then they did do it. Obviously last year, and those 2 victories alone have been phenomenal. But there have been others expanding the Mexico City policy to defund Planned Parenthood overseas. They were able to get around that a lot of ways because they were based in America, so they were still getting some of those international funds. Trump got rid of that this year. So there have just been some victories. But at 40 Days for Life, we had, thanks to the Institute of Law and Justice, which you've done a great job heading up, we had a tremendous victory that many people didn't think was possible, and including us, where you do the right thing, hoping for the best outcome. But our lawsuit against the DOJ on behalf of Mark Houck, who's been on the podcast, we'll put that episode up. He had this unjust raid on his home. He didn't take the DOJ deal. And he was acquitted in Philadelphia, and then he decided, because he didn't take their deal, that he would stand up for the pro-life movement and sue the DOJ, and we won just recently.
Yes, I think we've gone from the big picture, to the medium picture to the specific, right? And we have the pro-life movement, but then we have the people in the pro-life movement, and we got to defend it all, and we have to evangelize it all and advocate for it all. I do want to say I agree that we can't take a win. You can't just. It's like, but do you get yelled at by the coach after you win because you could have won by more, and you're like, but I get that, but it's not that was the final. That was the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like there's not another one that we need to get better for until next year.
Right.
Can't we just take the win? And you all have relatives like that. You're a little bit like that, Sean. You can't just say, you give Sean a gift and he's like, oh man, I didn't expect, this is perfect. I didn't have one. Just say thank you. Just say thanks for thinking of me on my birthday, bro. Some people just can't say, yeah, thank you. And some people can't take yes for an answer.
Sneak a thank you in there. I just like to describe.
No, and I don't mean that you're ungrateful. You may be. I don't mean that because I don't know.
You're good at giving gifts. I'm ungrateful.
No.
Steve's never given me anything in his entire life.
I've given you plenty of cheese.
Okay, I take that back. I'm very
Yeah, the greatest gift of them all.
I don't know why Steve doesn't give you gifts the kind way that you treat him in the podcast. And
That's why you don't have any good news in your aura.
Right.
But I want to point out that there is a rational basis, as we say in the law, for the pro-lifers, and frankly, people on the other side too, to not accept as good news any legal victory, any law, any constitutional amendment, frankly, because the very first thing that happens is 97 lawsuits get filed on the other side, and you're like, I thought they changed that. Well, there's an injunction against it. What's an injunction? And it gets changed. So now we hear that Trump may refund some of Planned Parenthood. And you're like, well, why would he do that? And it's all this complicated, or Florida's trying to wipe out the abortion pill entirely. And Trump wants to pause that.
Yeah, in Louisiana.
Why does he want to do that? And Louisiana's trying to ban most of it. That sounds bad. Well, no, it's actually good because he's going to have HHS and the FDA look into it well, why is he doing it? It's complicated, right? And as I always say in my talks, that's why we're going to fight in the courts, but we're going to win on our knees. Those are natural battles, but this is a supernatural movement. The great mystery is life, right? Why did he give humans, why did the Lord in heaven give humans the right to create life, but not the angels? These are the great mysteries. And so I would say that it's understandable and even rational not to trust. But there are battles that have been won. And like you said, this is good news. And whether you accept it or not, in the last 2 years, over 100 pro-life laws have been passed around the country. And after the advent of the overturning of Roe, glorious overturning of Roe, we have, half the states are able to be pro-life, and more than a dozen of those are absolutely pro-life, and protect life from beginning to end. And there are so many laws, and I think we can run through them pretty quick here today, just about the categories of what is happening in the federal government and in the states to protect life, and that we can say it's working. We're not only going to win, but we are winning.
The reason this is so good and a good podcast topic for the listeners is that the three of us are not bury your head in the sand or pie in the sky people. I mean, I love being an Irish cynic, and I look at bad news, and I probably like bad news more than good news. But we also have to recognize that there is actual good news, because I think in daily conversation, people don't realize how far the pro-life movement has come just in the last 5 years, much less 15 years. And when you mention 100 pro-life laws passed in the last 2 years in a post-Roe America, that is detrimental to Planned Parenthood. And if you want to look at an accurate grade of the pro-life movement, listen to what Planned Parenthood and NARAL say. They're terrified of RFK's investigation into the FDA's approval of the abortion pills. The pro-lifers are yelling like, why do they want to stop the Louisiana and the Florida pro-life laws? And it's like, well, because that could endanger that on the big picture. And Planned Parenthood has said that. They're like, we know we want those laws to go through, because we know if this investigation is successful, this is part of an overarching movement agenda to ban abortion pills, which of course it is.
That's a whole big topic, as is the Irish. All your wars are merry and all your songs are sad, said Chesterton. You brought up a lot of stuff there, and I don't think we should get too deep into the FDA, but I wanted to point out that my legal perspective on it is it's complicated. We have a legal team, so we understand it. Yeah. But allowing the FDA and HHS, to the extent that they're involved, to review this with the current administration doesn't harm anything. If they go the other way and they say, no, we think we got it right and we're going to keep the abortion pill on the market, then the states can sue and the lawsuits can go forward. And one thing that's overlooked if you're not a lawyer, because lawyers really learn procedure, like what the law is, what, that you can't drive drunk. You may not be exactly sure what the limits are. You might be exactly sure, do I have to take a breathalyzer? Those are the procedures. So that's really what lawyers do learn, is how is the law implemented? Not what the law is, everybody can read, but what does it mean and how does it get implemented, put into action? And so remember, if we lose the lawsuits that are filed by the states, right, then that's bad. And that now we got to go to the Supreme Court again. But if we win the lawsuit that a state can modify a federal regulation, then why can't Illinois, Vermont, Hawaii sue to relax the regulation? So it's a double-edged sword, and if you're not in it daily, then you may not realize that. So I pointed out. The last thing is the action, and that we're not burying our head in the sand. I recall a book I read once where the Lord condemned the guy that buried the coin and didn't even put it in the bank.
Right.
So doing nothing's not an option. I'm pretty sure we were called to go out 2 by 2 and evangelize, to do something, right? Well, then go and sell everything you have. There's an action, or else we're not evangelizing and faith is not alive. And I like to think that if you hold the truth, what does it say? That the law came through Moses, but truth and grace came through Jesus Christ. We hold the truth, and we're going to evangelize that even in the courts, and not lie about things and not manufacture things, and tell the truth and give examples, like when they tell us that APR does not work, and we bring the woman and her child in. Right. They're like, well, that was something else. What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? That's coincidental. What about this one? 1100. Okay, it might work. Maybe it works sometimes, and so the truth is its own witness, as they say. So, and Steve and I have compiled a list, John, of a number of these categories of laws, and we won't go through the states and the laws, but I'll let him go through, like, what generally are we looking at in terms of now for some good news in the states?
Yeah, well, one of them is the laws that give the mother the opportunity to meet her baby through the ultrasound, right? And we know there's disputes on the actual number, but we know that it's undeniable when women meet their baby on that sonogram, they are significantly more likely to choose life. And so this is interesting to me because we hear about the right to choose. Well, doesn't the right to choose imply that you've got sufficient information to choose and that you have actual choices before you? And some of these laws, whether it be the ultrasound laws or, for example, some of the states that are doing more to support expectant mothers in crisis, all these things are really helping them to have the actual ability to choose life.
So maybe I should explain too, that's a law. But when the court rules on something, that's a law too. And so that's called statutory law. And what we're sort of going over today is mostly statutory laws. We talked about Roe v. Wade. That's case law. That's judge-made law, right? And that's the law of the land now, right? 9 people put on black robes, called themselves supreme, as I always say. And, 5-4, it turned out that you win, some lose, we won. And that is the law of the land that the Constitution was, and of course it overturned previous judge-made law. And then there's another type of law, regulatory law, administrative law, and that's like the FDA. So the FDA is not Congress, they can't pass a law, so they make regulations. And actually the more regulations they make, the more another Chesterton, the more we are ruled, not by law or legislatures, but by bureaucrats and regulations. And that is sort of what's happening in America. That's why it's important. And then, of course, there's God's law, which manifests itself, and all of it comes from God, which manifests itself in what's called the common law. And every creature in the universe knows the difference between beating somebody up and defending yourself, between borrowing your dad's car and stealing it. Mm-hmm. Like when the neighbor kid comes over and drives away with your car without asking and never comes back, that's stealing. When you go to the football game, you borrowed it. Like your dad allowed you to do that, and then you bring it back, right? You don't need law to that, and that's called common law, and that's what's come from the. And we have that in America. The English system has that. So I just wanted to set out some of these cases and wrap around back from ultrasounds, which are statutes. The judge doesn't say, I find that the Constitution of Missouri says that you have to have an ultrasound. That'd be ridiculous. They didn't have an ultrasound machine. But Houck was case law.
Yeah.
So they charged him with a statute called the FACE Act. They trumped up all this stuff, which he didn't do. They were in an argument because this dude was harassing his young son.
This Planned Parenthood volunteer.
Yeah, it'd be like charging 2 guys who didn't even know there was an abortion facility who got in an argument about whether the Eagles or the Cowboys were better, and they started shoving each other, which we know the answer to that. Anyway, why? That's a stupid argument, isn't it?
Good versus evil.
Yeah, it's good versus evil. I mean, everybody knows the answer, don't they? And speaking of not accepting a win, the Philadelphians rip down their city, whether they win or lose the Super Bowl.
That's true. Yes, we've joked about every NFL of course, I love saying this as a Cowboys fan. Every NFL stadium has a jail, right? Because there's a fight that breaks out. Philly is the only one that has a jail and a judge on duty during the games. They have to sentence people.
Justice delayed is justice denied. They got to get back to the third quarter.
That's right.
I gotta break some stuff. Yeah. So Mark Houck's case manifested itself through a statute, a federal law passed by Congress. So we have a federal laws, and then we got the state laws. We got the U.S. Constitution, and each state has a constitution. Which probably nobody knew about earlier, but they sure know about the state constitutions now because they're putting the right to abortion in it. And so he gets charged. Well, he gets charged first under the city. So cities have laws too, and states have laws. So he gets charged, and the DA colludes with the DOJ, allegedly, according to a newspaper article, drops the charge, and he gets an investigatory letter from the FBI, and they charge him. And then they do it under a federal law. Then they do a dawn raid on his house, despite the fact that we contacted the assistant U.S. attorney. I even had a former U.S. attorney from Arizona write the email to her, and they just ignored us. They just
Saying he would turn himself in.
peacefully turn himself in if you wind up charging him.
Correct.
They had 20 people with guns and pointing at dawn raid, pointing it at the children, at the wife, Ryan Marie, and all this stuff. And then so he goes to criminal trial, and he gets acquitted. But we also have 3 or 4 types of law. The main 2 are civil and criminal. So like you said, Mark Houck, for all of us, sued the DOJ and the federal government, as well as the state, Pennsylvania and some localities. And recently, we can announce now it's public, they settled that case for over, and the Houck family is going to get over $1 million for that wrongful prosecution.
Which is so awesome because, going in, it's like you can't fight City Hall. And there's a lot of truth to that. You just don't I'm going to sue the DOJ. Okay, great.
Yeah, can't the cops arrest people whatever way they want?
Right. And it was very, and it was definitely great, the change of administrations during this process. But
it's at least 50% of it.
yeah. Because the evidence was great and embarrassing, but they still had the you don't really tell us how to arrest people, so we're sorry. Maybe there could have been a different approach, but you may leave now. But what's great is, originally we've talked about Mark didn't take that deal that they offered him on J6, where you won't go to prison. He was facing 11 years. You won't have a $300,000 fine or whatever, but you got to plead guilty, and he didn't. And his wife said, if you do, don't come home, because they'll go after all the pro-lifers. And that really impacted 40 Days for Life. There was legit fear when this originally started back in September of 2021 that we're in trouble. We now have the spotlight on us, and if they can do this to Mark Houck, they can do it to everybody. Our local leaders were complaining about losing volunteers, and just the recent announcement of this victory, even though obviously the harassment we've gotten from the DOJ has significantly dropped off since Biden left. This is such a great victory because there's still a lot of fear. And I've had leaders say, this is going to be so good for getting people out to the sidewalk.
Well, we had leaders saying, am I going to be the next Mark Houck? Should I keep going out there? Steve and I deal with that a lot on the legal ad stuff. And now we have them. And this is the great way to kick it off and get back to the ultrasounds and other laws and then they said, oh, he won. You had our back, like you said, at the ILJ. When we didn't charge. It was pro bono. That was our great donors at 40 Days for Life that run the ILJ. There were other good lawyers involved in this case in both Kansas City, Philadelphia, Missouri. So you fight City Hall, you need resources, and those resources came, and the Houck family was able to reach this, what I consider to be very favorable settlement. And people then said, oh, we did win, and we can't accept that win. I agree with you on the ultrasound, too, getting back to statutory law, that is things that state or federal, the Congress or state legislatures pass, and that ultrasound, because, the abortion industry knows that if you show an ultrasound or if you hear a heartbeat, that's why the doctor puts on headphones and turns the screen away from you, because men and women choose over 90% of the time, well, that's my son. That's the reality of it, that people, no more lies. And so that's a great law that they're passing in some states, along with counseling, right? And mandatory counseling, professional notice. Why wouldn't you want to be counseled about one of the most, whether to kill your kid? Like, let's say you do think it's a good thing. It's still an extreme thing.
Right.
Like, why wouldn't you want to be counsel about, but if I don't, I can't continue my job and I was going to made junior vice president. Like, why wouldn't you want help? And then if you're a child, wouldn't you want to counsel your children? You don't let your 14-year-old make any other decisions.
Right.
Why don't you buy a house? Why don't you drop out of school and buy a house? You help them through that. That's what parents are for. And so mandatory notification laws, consent laws.
Waiting periods?
Waiting periods. All of these things are coming in a lot of states by the dozens and dozens and dozens. And they may be small victories. They may be overturned by the next legislature, but they are victories, right? There may be another person arrested, and his name may not be Mark Houck, but he may have been out there heroically doing what Houck did. And it's not a panacea. There's no silver bullet other than Jesus Christ. I don't know what else we can do but tout these great victories, and it's working, isn't it? People are coming out more.
It is working, and we survey all of the 40 Days for Life leaders after each campaign. What is helping you? What is hurting you? What can we do better? What's going on externally that is helping or harming your campaign? And one of the things we surveyed the leaders on is changes, either increase or decrease in persecution from the government impacting your vigil turnout, and a decrease in persecution and the handling of the ILJ of the persecution that does exist has led to increases in vigil participation. So it's very good news. It's something that should be encouraging to everybody, I think. And I would also ask, we talk about Mark's victory, getting that settlement as a victory, not just for Mark's family, and that things were made right for the harm that his family suffered, but a victory for all pro-lifers and, in fact, for all Americans. Tell us, if you would, Matt, if you're a pro-lifer in Phoenix or Alabama or wherever, how does this affect you? Does this set any sort of a precedent, or will it make the next pro-abortion administration think twice about making an example of the next Mark Houck? How does that work?
Well, I think that it shows.
When Newsom is elected, what happens to us?
Well, I think
speak Steve.
I think that it shows that you can win, that there are people who are going to help you win.
Yeah.
That there is a safety net. You're not alone. I always use the analogy when someone gets a lawsuit against them, civil lawsuit, whatever. It's like they were just told by the nurse, "Oh, the radiology came back. You have brain cancer. The doctor's not available for 2 weeks."
Right.
And you're like, what's my life look like in those 2 weeks? Am I going to be able to work? Can I take care of my family? Am I going to start limping within those 2 weeks? Like, what, when your name's on that lawsuit, it's different.
Changes everything.
And good lawyers know that. And so that's why we call them attorneys and counselors at law, right? So it's similar to what we do on the street in front of an abortion facility. We hold the truth. I'm not going to tell you this is going to be easy. It's going to be a long walk, but I'm going to walk with you. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Because I love you. And that's what we're doing on the street. And lawyers don't tell their clients they love them that often, but you can manifest that by doing San Jose Maria says, I think people forget that the prerequisite of doing an excellent job is doing your job in the first place.
Right.
So you can work hard. Not neglecting your family, not neglecting your other duties, not neglecting your health, but you can work hard and give reasonable expectations and work within the law and in sound reason, and then appeal. I think if of any person on earth, Donald Trump has shown that appeal. I mean, the guy can handle like 57 lawsuits at a time, but he appeals everything, and a lot of those times they win. That's the power of having oversight. There's not just one thing. It's not just like, well, I lost the trial. What do I do next? I guess I got to pay $1 billion. No, then there's an appeal and there's reversals and it's complicated, and we walk that walk with you. So the one thing that's going to happen is people are going to know, at least at 40 Days for Life, that there are resources. There are a lot of other good conservative and life-loving public interest law firms that help people as well, that do a lot of stuff that doesn't even have free speech and against euthanasia. And yes, they touch the pro-life movement, but not specifically related to abortion. The other thing is as you, Steve, because he knows the answer to this question, which is when a municipal authority comes out, like the sign administrator, and there's like 2 cops there, and they don't have any idea why they're there. They just heard about the crazy pro-lifers. So they're like eating their sandwich from Panera Bread or whatever, and the sign guy's out there, and he's like, "I am the subdivision agent And like Sally, the great pro-life leader who's been there for 12 straight years, is like, "It's nice to meet you. Do you want a T-shirt?" And he's like, "No, I'm here because of your T-shirts." She's like, "Great, I have large X. What are you? You're a trim guy. No, you can't wear those." And they don't say, "Yeah, well, frankly, who are you?" Right. And they call us, and we're like, so we call up, the zoning administrator, the community development director, the city manager, the city planner, the city attorney, and we're like, "Hey, man, we can wear T-shirts. We're on the sidewalk. Like, have you seen the T-shirts? Like blank, 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 Elon Musk. I mean, people are wearing a lot.
People are wearing a lot of
We're
stuff.
just saying we love you. Our T-shirts say 40 days of your life, or you don't need to do this today." And they're like, "Yeah, I know. Well, we'll tell them to stay." They have a resource. And so that, I think, is what they're empowered to say, "I don't know, maybe I am not allowed to stand on the sidewalk and I can't put the sign in the ground." Nope, sorry, they have an ordinance against it. We find it to be constitutional. You can, but hey, here are some other things you can do. You could get an A-frame sign. You could wear the sign. You could park your car legally in front of the thing, and you could put the signs in your window. Oh, those are good ideas. But sorry, you can't tape it to the telephone pole. Like, they were having a big problem with it. The wind would blow them off. They had a lot of litter. They passed an ordinance against taping stuff to the telephone pole. You can't do it. God's not limited by tape and a sign. Okay, great. But they know the rule, and they've got someone to fight for them. And as you know, 99% of the time it's effective. When we call up the chief of police, when we call up the zoning administrator, when we call up the DA, he's like, "Okay, I get it. They've got a lawyer. We sent a guy out to rattle their cage. You called our bluff. Hold your sign."
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not saying they committed some violation of law. They got a complaint. They went out there. The guy's not a genius, right? He said, "Move to the other side of the street." Our people moved, and then we're like, "No, we don't." You and I were in Worcester. And the guy was like,
That was great.
And actually, we were Worcester's across the street from the Planned Parenthood.
It's in a shopping center.
And it's on the street in front of that guy's shopping center.
Right.
And it was affecting his business. He's like, "Get him to move closer to the plant." But for whatever reason, for counseling Worcester, because the parking lot wanted to stay across the street. So that was the opposite. And I told the lieutenant, with all due respect, Lieutenant, I've taught over 100 times in the academy. I'm retired law. You can't enforce the not law. You can't go around making up law and then enforcing it. Like, we have somebody else to make the law, and then we have judges to judge the law. You enforce. And so he's like, "I know, but they call like 3 times a week. The guy just wants you to move away from his business." I said, "Well, he has an option. He could move his business away." And he's like, "Come on, so you're going to move?" They don't care. Like, right? They don't. But when confronted with authority, Romans 3:18, I guess. When confronted with authority, they don't wield the sword for nothing. The guy's not going to lose his job over it.
Right.
So anyway, that's what happens. So they have backup, and they know what to do.
It makes a big difference, and it just clears the playing field of obstacles. You probably remember, Matt, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, we kept running in Southern California to all these scenarios where our leaders would call the police and say, "Hey, just want to introduce myself. My name's Tim. We're doing the vigil. We'll be here. We're peaceful. We signed a statement of peace." And then law enforcement would say, "Well, you need a permit. And to get the permit, you need $2 million of liability insurance." And people kind of throw their hands up and think, "Oh, I can't do 40 days for life anymore." And this is the exact sort of scenario I think you're talking about, where the leaders are panicking, and usually it's a phone call, maybe a letter, and, "Oh, sorry, we realize that this does not fit the category of a parade, so therefore,
It may have been some misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember the Bishop of Pueblo? When we wrote the letter and sent him the Vatican's endorsement, there may have been some misunderstanding. I didn't exactly say that. And of course he did say it, and all of a sudden 40 Days for Life was welcome again. But I know we're short on time, so we got these parental notification laws that are passing. We've got these hundreds of laws in the last 2 years and more to come, more states fighting in court. We've got ultrasound laws, and I want to end up on heartbeat and ask Sean, because I know he has feelings on the heartbeat laws, but we've got pain-capable bills where you can't, seems obvious, but kill a child in the womb who can feel pain, which seems like a really good thing. You shouldn't kill any child in the womb at any time. We've got defunding, so less and less public funding in the pro-life states. Planned Parenthood, we've got laws banning abortion pills through the mail.
There was also an executive order in January banning all This was from HHS, banning all use of aborted babies for medical research.
That's right.
This is something I don't even think the pro-life movement asked for. The HHS just did it, and it was kind of they did a twofold. Number one, they're pro-life and they don't want to do that. They also laid out the evidence of why that doesn't advance the ball anymore in medicine, that it doesn't even do any good to do research using aborted babies. And so it was kind of twofold.
So that's the spending clause. So the federal government can pass a regulation like that, but it's only to federal government, right? They can't tell Michigan that they can't use, except they can tell Michigan that they won't give them any highway money, or they won't give them any money for their schools, or they won't give them any Title X money. So it's the power of the purse.
Power of the purse.
And there's also the laws about the abortion pills, which they're getting into, which they're trying to say we're going to make it a state law. Yes, you're using the federal government, but you can't send pills. You're still in our state, and we can make it illegal for you to get them at the post office, for you to mail them, send them out of our state, prescribe them to another state. But one of the most effective laws, some people don't like them in the pro-life movement, some people love them, most people love them, is the heartbeat bills.
Yeah.
And a bill is a proposed law, and when it passes and is signed by the governor, it's called a law. Both houses, the House and the Senate, the delegates in the Senate, whatever you want to call it, and then it's signed, it becomes a law. That's statutory law, and they put it in the books. That's what it means. Hey, that law's in the books. The governor signed it. And we saw this manifestation. Steve and I did. I remember I was with Father Pavone in Georgia. They had just passed the heartbeat law, so they were driving into South Carolina with these pregnant women whose babies had heartbeats. Who wants to be on that bus to abort the babies?
Depressing.
Because so one of the things people say is like, that's not enough.
Right.
And I know
you don't care about the babies at 5 weeks.
Like
You got me.
Is that a good I hear that, and real rational people who spend thousands of hours praying on the street say that. I think that's a good place to end up. I mean, right? Because we had heartbeat laws. It essentially ends abortion.
They close abortion facilities. And the way to
that's
end
a good
abortion
thing,
is
right?
to close abortion facilities. Yes. And I understand. Of course, we're not lobbyists, but all politics is compromise. And the heartbeat bill is the most genius political pro-life move in the history of our movement, in my opinion, because they go and they say, well, you can't have an abortion until you detect a heartbeat. And the pro-abortion politicians say, they don't even know they're pregnant. And we just sort of nod because they're right. So that's why it ends abortion, because they don't even know they're pregnant, so they don't know if they need or want an abortion. And so it's great. And that's why if you're going to be in politics and be a purist, that's not a compromise. Hundreds of facilities, dozens of facilities have closed. And I've said before on the podcast, the overturning of Roe v. Wade in Texas was symbolic and awesome, because but it kind of stopped there. Most of our abortion facilities were already closed because of the heartbeat bill. We'd had it for 3 or 4 years. It was detrimental to Planned Parenthood. And that's why it does matter what they say about legislation.
It matters what they say in legislation. Steve and I were talking about that. Words matter, right? I mean, that's biblical, right? We'll be accountable.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but the reason, it shows what I know. When the heartbeat bills were coming out, I first heard them pitched in D.C. in 2012. Okay, this was this idea that we got to do, and it's going to close a lot of abortion facilities. And I remember kind of rolling my eyes thinking that would never pass in any state, not even Texas. It's too good to be true. And so, I had to be dragged into that. And that was just, we told you we were negative cynics here. But the good that it did was unbelievable. And it saved so many babies, and it ended abortion in a lot of these states.
Well, it's not a half measure if written right, and what's in the law right. So if you say you can abort a baby up until they have a heartbeat, no one can sign on to that.
Right.
But if you say no abortion will occur on any child located in the womb that has a heartbeat, that's just a banning of it. It's like saying, we live in Chicago. We got this crazy new government. there's just too many burglaries. We can only get like half the burglars. We're just not going to get any.
Right.
No, like we're still against burglary.
Right.
We're still trying to get them all, but we are going to prioritize what they call triage in the medical. We are going to triage, like the guy holding his neck with the blood spurting out, and then the guy with the finger that's broken. We go to the guy in the neck first, right? We triage these things, and so I mean, we were talking about that, how the words matter too.
And it's
not by half measure; it's incrementally.
And what that is, which I think is stupid, is
everything I said.
No, that was good. But to compare it to a 20-week ban, and I know we're like wrapping up, but the 20-week ban is a total compromise and ruins all these state laws that are across the country and all of that. And we've made so much progress. A 20-week ban would have been great in 2011 with Obama, where we're just like, give us something, right? But
I mean, a heartbeat bill is a 6-week ban.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why I was like, you guys, I get it. It's a heartbeat. And what I heard around the heartbeat bill actually happened, and it happened in Texas, which is we can never remove, and you've mentioned this, we can't remove common law or human nature from this. And so we had Democrats in Texas. It was like an invitation. We're so divided and we think nobody's going to vote with us. It's us and them. We had a lot of Democrats in Texas that were like, I don't want to vote against the heartbeat of the baby. It humanized the baby, just the name of the bill and the logic behind it.
They have to start saying stupid things like, it's not a heartbeat, it's a fetal tone, it's cardiac activity. And as soon as that conversation begins, we're winning.
Right.
Oh, you have been lied to by the pro-life movement. It is not a heart. It is not a heartbeat. It is tissue that is pulsating. But that's heart tissue. You can take and they're like, but it's not a heart.
Don't complicate this.
Yeah,
I think you're complicating it. I think it's heart.
Technically, heartbeat isn't even a medical term. Oh, yeah. I guess you got me there.
And as we've said many times, a beating heart is good.
Hey, if I got the AMA to make heartbeat a medical term, would you agree with me and become pro-life? No. Yeah. Well, look, and I just appreciate you having this podcast, you guys. There is good news. We do need to know about these things. This is our job. We have a representative government, and we expect lawyers like me who are in the pro-life movement to follow these laws. Not everybody can do that. They're working in the fields or in the mines or in the office buildings with a tie or without a tie. They're getting their hands dirty. They're mechanics. They're ranchers and farmers. They can't follow every law and every concatenation, but we can in our own movement. And so that's I appreciate the opportunity to report that there's a lot of good going on, and we are winning. And people don't want to abort their child, and people do want to be involved in their children's lives who are pregnant, and no matter how they got that way. And people do want counseling, and people do want an ultrasound. You know, now you can have like the color of the hair on your child's.
It's unbelievable.
So I appreciate it, and I think that it's good for people to know that we are winning and we're gonna win. But ultimately, nobody can tell you that your state's constitution is going to remain abortion-free. So don't hang your soul on your state's constitution. Look to God.
I think there's a couple things that I take away from this, and thank you for sharing all this good news, because I didn't know everything that you said. But 10 years ago, Planned Parenthood was Mike Tyson in 1985. Maybe you could get in the ring with him, but you're going to end up bloodied and on the mat. And
Certainly
then
your ear will.
Then Buster Douglas got in and beat him. And I think that's where we are right now. 10 years ago, the idea of defunding Planned Parenthood, overturning Roe, suing the DOJ, all those things, it's crazy talk. You couldn't do it. And so the air of invincibility is gone. I think one of the other things I take away from it too is if there's all this good news, why do we see a lot of negativity around the pro-life issue? And I think some of it is, it's important to take a look at the social media atmosphere. And when we had Biden in office and all these terrible things going on with persecution of pro-lifers, there's a lot of clickbait. And the clickbait doesn't go away just because the guys who are persecuting pro-lifers are out. There's a lot of, what do you say, Sean, with The Godfather? There's a lot of money in that white powder.
A lot of money in that white powder. That's what Sonny said, which as you know, the Corleone family decided not to get into drugs because he thought it was a dirty business. So even they had standards.
Yeah,
but
there's lines. There's disorder.
there's disorder. The one guy, I don't want it around the schools. It's like, oh, then it's okay. So we could just quote that all day. But I appreciate the Mike Tyson analogy. And by the way, if with all due respect to Mike Tyson, since he's playing the role, I guess, of Planned Parenthood in this analogy, if we saw Mike Tyson on the street today, we would still have a healthy fear of him, knowing he's capable of a lot, and that's Planned Parenthood's position today. So shout out to Mike Tyson. Don't know if he listens to the podcast, but he should. Okay, please not just rate, review, share this podcast. We will stick the Mark Houck interview. It's fun to listen to now because it's all over with a very, very good ending. That is the interview that Matt and I did with Mark upon his decision to have Matt and the ILJ and so many other great attorneys represent him to sue the DOJ. So we'll put that up. It's fun to listen to, particularly, it's a couple of years ago we recorded that, and it's been a long process. And so if you want to go back, you get definitely the details from Mark's perspective of what he went through. And if you want a little spice of justice in your week, I would go and listen to that podcast. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Matt. Please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.